Hey there, Shooby-Doodlers. Well, today I'm going to show you how to draw an evil lizard. This is not exactly the same lizard that I drew in my story, The Killer Cat Flap, which you can hear me tell and see all the illustrations here. But I'm going to do it in a slightly different style, I think. And so, so this is the evil kind of lizard in the thing. But I'm going to do this in a grayscale kind of thing, like I did with the cockroach previously last week. Some people said they liked that. And why would you do it in grayscale? Because when illustrating books, black and white are cheaper, and grayscale kind of adds a little more interest, I suppose. So what I imagine, this is kind of the flat part, mostly the flat part of the body sitting on the floor. So now I'm thinking this is going to be kind of the height of it. So I'm thinking this is kind of a line down the middle of it to give it kind of the height, really, I suppose. And then I wanted to have this kind of dragon kind of thing here, but now this is where it gets complicated. So it wants to be, oh, go that way, and then it's coming kind of like that way, and then I want it to kind of flip over. Oh, maybe I'll have a little flick on the top there too. So this is kind of, that's kind of where one eye is going to be, and that's where another eye is going to be. So that one's going to be kind of smaller and squashed on that side, and this is going to be bigger and rounder on this side. But in fact, I want them even bigger, almost close together, so I can get this kind of evil eyebrow slash eyelids and get that nice sort of curve going right the way through the whole thing. And then we want this kind of evil evil mouth. And some people say, why do I laugh when I'm doing my videos? Because I'm kind of reacting with this character. This character is appearing on the page in front of me, and I know it's come out of my imagination, but it's kind of manifesting on the page, and he's kind of you know, I'm talking to you, but I'm also building a relationship with this character. He's kind of looking at me like that, and I'm thinking, yeah, right. So this is going to be his mouth coming down there. It'll be going up into a kind of a smiley kind of thing, and a lip, and then that's going to be his body kind of coming around here and underneath. And then I'm going to want to have him kind of in a kind of look like he's almost ready to pounce. So we'll have his front leg is going to be kind of coming out from behind his tongue there, kind of like that, and then he's going to give him these little spindly fingery toes like that, and then his back leg is kind of quite powerful sort of thigh part there, although it's kind of really weird the way animal back legs work. I think I've done that in other videos. I've talked about that. And I want to have him on a kind of tiled floor, so I'm going to draw these kind of perspective lines going off into, I think more like that, into the distance, just to add a bit of drama to it. And I suppose these ought to be getting more like that, really. And then these are quite close together, and then they get further apart here like that. So now I can ink him in. Oh, let me put my glasses on. That's better. I can see better. I've just started kind of wearing glasses for drawing, which is a bit of a shame. My long sight is actually getting better, strangely, as my short sight is, or whichever way, you know, so I can actually see things further away much better now. That's improving, but my kind of reading sight is getting a bit more dodgy, so I'm going to put a pair of glasses on. I've got so many old pairs of glasses in my studio, I should kick them out. And it's quite hard to find the right one sometimes. So these are kind of the eyelids, and I'm making them kind of wobbly like that. And so that's one eye there, and that's the other eye there. So this one is much more squashed, and this one is much more open. And I want the eye balls coming from underneath the eyelid, which just makes it look a little more sinister. And I'm going to give this kind of crinkly edge around the eyeball there, and then generally as well I'm going to give a crinkly line to all his body, and then maybe just a little more smoother for the tongue coming around like that. And then I'm just going to dot that away there. And I think also I'm going to need some slurps, and these are kind of raindrop, teardrop shapes, but you want them kind of facing in the direction that they're moving as well, so they'll be going off like that. So now I have to think where the next bit's going to be. I know they don't have teeth quite like this, but this is an evil one, remember? So, and he eats cockroaches, so he needs something to munch them up with. And so I'm going to bring that around there like the bottom lip, and then this will be his throat coming in under there. Now we're going to need his front legs that are coming down like that, and then into these little kind of toes, little creepy little clicky clacky claws on the end. Clicky clacky, sorry, getting carried away. And I think quite a lot of illustrators, they do kind of funny voices, and especially when you're doing a character, because you sort of get into the character of, it's like acting in that kind of way, in that you kind of, you know, take on the persona of the character that you're drawing, like an actor would. And you kind of, you know, you find yourself, your body slowly hunching up in the same, you know, kind of attitude that the character is portrayed in. So now I have to think about this. So now I'm going to put these little kind of ruffles on the tail there like that, but then this one wants to kind of come that way, and then they'll be coming that way, and that will be coming that way. So here we've got a kind of a line along the tail, so this will be coming very thinly along there. Is this working? Does this look right? I think it sort of does. You know, quite often you kind of launch into a drawing and you think it's going to work, and you hope it's going to work, and then eventually you get there. So that's kind of coming out on that side, so that'll be, yeah, we're getting there, so this, we want to get this line nice and curved in there, and then we have to fit these in. That's going to be behind, and one more behind there like that. Yes, we've got there. Good. And it's like building, it's like building really. Yes, you kind of putting one brick on top of another. There's one brick of one element of the drawing on top of another, and you get there in the end. So this is kind of his tummy down here. Yeah, I think we got that, and this kind of curl around. So I'm not quite sure, something slightly weird going on there. I'll do that, and that might just help. So we're going to put these little lumps and warty bits all over his skin like that, and on his legs. And I think we need to have some kind of markings on the kind of frills or spine, whatever you like to call it, a bit like that. And then we need to think about the tiles in the background. I'm going to let these just go right off the page. And I've done this really quickly by eye, and it's sort of experience, and I might get away with it, but you know, ideally all of these lines are eventually going to meet up. So if you've got a long ruler and put a drawing pin somewhere over there, then you can get them all absolutely perfect. Which you know, so I'm just relying on experience to get it looking roughly right. That'll be enough for today, because I suppose I should I suppose I should do it perfectly and get it exactly right. I know some people, it's very funny, they tell me in humour, I get messages saying, you know, I'm terribly sorry, I'm a bit OCD, and you know, you did such and such at 4 minutes 33 seconds, which was absolutely wrong, you know, and I apologise if there are certain things which are sort of jangling and, you know, sort of making you feel a bit weird because I haven't quite got it exactly right. So here, in fact, this is going very strange there. So in fact, I'm getting a... But again, you see, with these kind of angles, you can alter the whole feeling of the whole thing. So that's actually kind of getting a little distorted around it. And as I always say, when the ink is dry, then you can erase all the pencil lines. And again, as ever, I'm just going to be using Winsor & Newton neutral tint on this as my phone starts beeping away at me. And I'm going to kind of stick with one kind of grey tone. So I know the tiles should be you know, probably black and white, but I'm going to do with one tone to start off with. So I'm just going to zoom through all these tiles because it's going to be boring otherwise. Hey, if you've been watching this far, then you're obviously very interested in drawing. So while I zip through this painting bit, why not click the subscribe button and make sure you keep coming back to the Shoo Rayner Drawing Channel every week. Now, the reason I'm doing these in grey and not in just sort of solid black, that would be, you know, the easiest thing is just to paint them in black, is that then the floor would just completely drown out the character. So so I'm going to kind of build up on these shades as we go along, these shades of grey. So the tiles will be darker eventually where the shadows fall. So now we've got the difference between the black and the white tiles, then what I'm going to do is wash in the background, some shading in the background, but then I'm going to let it fade towards the front. So it'll just be kind of, maybe I'll add a bit more here just to, because I want the sort of crest of the lizard to stand out a little bit there. So now with this brush pen, then it keeps flowing clean water, so as I bring that sort of down, then it's fading because it's fading because all the colour is fading because all the grey in the brush is kind of being washed away, so we get that kind of fairly even fading going on. But we're also going to want to have shadows, so I'm going to put those in now. We're going to have some shadow down here because I think it's going to help me a bit later. So I'm going to sort of work these in here. So again, as I'm painting, then the brush is cleaning itself as the water keeps sort of flowing down and washing out of the brush. It only works with a water brush, it doesn't work with a normal brush like that. And then I want to clean the brush a bit, so I get my kitchen towel there, and then I'm just kind of fading the colour from the shadow there. And then I want the shadow to be a bit darker in there, so while the water is wet, while the paint is wet on the paper, I can do this, and then this sort of darker shade will then trickle into it where it's wet at the moment. And we'll get that kind of bit more subtlety to it then. And we'll want some in there. It's constantly tidging and working and pulling the, I keep wanting to call it colour, but it's tone, isn't it really? A tone. Anyway, we'll keep calling it colour. Keep moving the colour around, so that's got some shade in there. And now I'm imagining that the light is coming from this direction, from quite high up probably. So I'm going to draw in a kind of a harsh reflection up there, and then clean the brush quickly, and then kind of fade it out like that. A lot of this does depend on the kind of paper you're using as well. If you're using cheap photocopier paper, it's going to wear out pretty quickly. So this is kind of quite stiff, smooth surface watercolour paper. And then here we want to have a kind of a highlight section there where the light is catching its slimy skin, and then again we want to catch light, so I'm leaving it on the top of the ridges of these fins, or whatever they're called, scales. And again we'll have a little bit of kind of shininess in places along there. And so it's just a question of kind of painting it really, and getting all this getting some tone and stuff. So as it comes around the corner, of course, it's going to get a bit darker, kind of around under the belly, should I say. But I'm leaving these little bits where, you know, maybe that I think we'll get some shadow from the cast by the fin things on the top. I haven't got a good name to describe them, have I? No, they're not scales, are they? Like a shark has fins, so it's kind of like fins, but we're going to want a bit of darkness behind the tongue there, because the tongue will be creating a shadow. We don't want it terribly dark under the tummy. We need a kind of ambient reflected light up from the floor, which is going to be coming upwards. I think you can spend your whole life just kind of working out lighting effects, and you know, some artists, that's what they do. They do spend their whole life obsessed with just that, you know, the play of light, how it works. And so I suppose, you know, thankful for them for doing all the work, and we just go, oh right, that's how you do it. And then we kind of build on their skills, I suppose. That's how it's always worked, I suppose. And now it's just kind of adding texture here, really, I suppose, is what I'm doing with these little dibby-dabby brush strokes. And it's using the shape of the brush. And, you know, I just use this one brush, and I think you find lots of watercolour tutorials will say, oh, you know, get this brush and that brush and this brush and that brush, and you get, you know, and each brush will give you a different kind of brush shape, and you can use the shape of the brush for various techniques, but I've never really got into that somehow, and you know, and I suppose that's kind of the fact that I don't do that is kind of part of my style and my technique. So, you know, if you're wondering how to use, you know, big fat fan shaped brushes with watercolour, or how to use, you know, long thin ones and everything, I don't know. I've tried them all, but just never got on with them, and I always found I could do what I wanted with sort of one pointy-ish brush. But, you know, with watercolours, it's all about building layers and building layers, and taking it darker and darker in certain areas in the shadows. And I'm very aware of this tongue here, that I want it to stand out, so it's going to be much paler than everything else. So I need to make everything a bit darker behind it, really. And also the tail is, and also the tail here, I want it to stick out a bit, you know, to stand out rather, should I say. So we need a bit darker in there to let these limbs stand out as well. But then we want that darker underneath here to let the tongue stand out. So it's kind of building up these shadows to bring the forward things forward and take the things at the back further back, and at the same time adding texture as I'm going along. So it's kind of so here now you see that it's quite dark where I'm taking that, but then as I take it away, I'm basically doing lots and lots of dots, but the dots are getting further and further apart, like you would see, you know, a newspaper photograph is made up of dots, and you know, the smaller the dots, the lighter the perception of grey, because you're not actually seeing grey at all, you're just seeing lots of black dots, but your mind is telling you that it's grey because it's a smaller black dot. It's kind of like pixels on the screen. So I'm building him up in what is, I suppose, a pointillistic kind of style. If you can look at Sura, the pointillistic French painter, all painted in little dots, but he used dots to create colour, whereas here I'm using dots to create tone and texture. Building and building and building. And because of that, this is going to be quite a long video, so I hope you're still watching. Let me know in the comments if you are still watching this far. Go and put, yes, dear Shoo, I am still watching, and then everyone else will be watching, reading the comments, thinking, what are they talking about? And in fact, let's have a code word if you've got this far. Yes, Shoo, the code word is oh no, well that's not going to work, is it? Because then everyone else can read. So this is kind of shadow that is dropping in, that his eyelid is creating, but it's probably gone a little bit too dark, so the eyeball's not quite, the pupil's not quite standing out enough, so I might have to just go over that a little bit afterwards. Oh, I might have overdone that. And I think if I was doing this in a illustration, then I think maybe either give up and start again, but nowadays I don't do that quite so much. Nowadays I'd be thinking, can I just lighten that up in Photoshop later? But it's actually drying a lot lighter, so that's okay, so I'm happy now. Now I'm running out of water in my brush. So I have a jam jar here. I kind of suck some up into the handle. I should keep a little kind of filler bottle or something with to hand. And now I'm going to be quite a bit darker with the tile under here, because I think it's time to do that. So it's just, you know, 2 or 3 tiles I'm going to make definitely much darker. And I think we're going to need a bit more darkness in here to let the tail kind of stand out a bit more, and also here, and kind of around like that as well, I think. So I'll just keep working that and keep working it. There, that works, that's good. At the same time, I think we need a bit more darkness and texture in on this side of the tail as well. Yes, I think this is very much about, it's not great big painting sweeps, it's little dots, and it's all about this sort of texture. But each time I'm coming around, I'm adding a little bit more paint, a little more darkness to some areas, and then leaving previous areas as they are, because they're kind of just right. And so it's just sort of adding a bit more where it's needed in each sort of sweep around, and slowly building up all this texture. This is going to be a long video. I haven't done quite such a long video in a long time, I don't think. If you've stayed along this far, then let me know in the comments and saying yes, you stayed the distance and watched the whole thing, and whether you enjoyed it and what you got out of it. It'd be really useful to know, and whether you'd like more videos like this. So I think this needs to be really quite dark in that kind of area again, and then bring these patterny kind of splodges up here, and I suppose this really is just experience, having done it before. So the mouth is not right yet, so we need to, I think the lip needs a bit of shininess there, and I think inside it needs to be quite dark. So we let these little teeth, become more obvious. And I still haven't done the tongue. And having said that, I think we do need a little bit more here. I think it's just looking a little flat. It needs a bit more of that texture. And again, I think we still need some more texture in these areas. But as you sort of sweep over an area, then it does kind of flatten it out a bit. So you have to kind of then add those little tidgy bits on top, getting darker and darker and darker. So always start out light and add darker, and then we're going to want some little kind of more shadowiness in there, I think, like that. And maybe I can get onto the tongue now. So I'm going to thin down this grey quite a lot. I'm going to take some of it off the palette, and we want it to be quite shiny as well. So, oh, that's getting too dark. Too dark. So I'm going to sort of come around like that, and then we're going to leave a little bit of shininess there, and then this is going to be a bit darker down into that kind of fold underneath the tongue, and we can, a bit of shininess there, and the shininess will kind of disappear at that point, where we want to kind of flow in a bit darker down here, and then let it just sort of flow upwards like that. And then these little licks, and I'm doing kind of like that. So the darkest part is around the highlight. So there's the kind of the highlight. Clean the brush and then wash away from it like that. And you'll hardly see any of that, so I'm just going to do a tiny little bit like that. And maybe we just need a little more shadow there. I think we could have a little more along the bottom of this crest, just to differentiate the area, to make it look more crusty. And now I'm coming in, these are really quite dark black areas. I think I'm going to do a bit more on the eye, lashy kind of thing there. And now it's dry, I'm just doing some little bit extras, like a definite kind of shadow spreading out over the bottom of the tongue here. And then I think I'm going to go back to the pen, and I'm going to do use the pen, because I know the pen is definitely black, and I'm going to use this for kind of more texture around here. So I'm just going to do this kind of wiggly squiggly ness all over the body, kind of like this is the kind of like the final layer of watercolour, as it were. And the closer the dots are together, obviously the darker it is, and then the further the dots and the squiggles get away, then the lighter. And I'm going to reinforce the darkness of these pupils here as well, I think. This is something I quite often don't do, but I'm getting a little bit of Chinese white. I don't keep white in my watercolour set, but you know, when you're coming to do finished illustrations, and you can use all sorts of type of things, but I don't keep white in my set here for sort of general sketching. And I'm just going to do a little bit along here for kind of highlight, and maybe a bit there and a bit there, just to add a little bit of where the light is catching the body. And then also I kind of feel I've overpainted it there as well, and we could maybe use a little bit there, and maybe some little bits just kind of randomly around. I'm not going to do any more, I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end.
Thanks for watching, and you can support this channel and get so much more on my Patreon page. Click to find out more. Make sure you are subscribed to the Shoo Rayner Drawing Channel on YouTube, and in the meantime, keep drawing, practice, and I'll see you next time. You take care now, bye bye.